All right, in this class, we're going to talk about the first 90 days in your new role. It's probably one of the most important times when you start a new position to make sure that you make the right impressions. So let me give you a high-level understanding of what we're going to cover in this class. So first, we're going to talk about our approach, and usually the way we do in all of our classes is the way that Teal thinks about this and the way we approach this particular topic. Then we're going to talk about before you start, some of the work you should do to get going. We're going to talk about the first 90 days themselves and the kind of things you're going to do in those first 90 days. Then thinking about your personal brand and making sure that you don't keep paying attention to it in the same way that you were during the job search. And then what do you do to set yourself up for that continual career growth? The main intention is for you to learn some strategies to support you in your new role during your first 90 days. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and jump into the class. All right, in this section, we're going to talk about Teal's approach to the first 90 days and the things that you want to think about and some of the concepts that we're going to introduce throughout the class. So what does first 90 days mean? It's a conceptual idea. No one's really keeping track of 90 days on the dot. It's an idea of 3 months, 30, 60, 90. It's this idea that in the first 90 days, you'll know whether you like it, if they like you, but it's a concept and it's not a literal thing, right? It's usually around months and things like that. And it's really what you're looking for is what we would call as mutual acceptance. And what we think about is the first 90 days are from the day you sign your offer letter to this date of mutual exhale, that you both feel like, boy, that was a great decision. I love it here. They love me. They're thinking, we love you. You want it to be that place of what we're calling mutual acceptance, that you both feel it was a great decision. And that could be 30 days, it could be 60 days, it could be 120 days, it could be a year. So we're going to call that conceptually the first 90 days. And what are you doing to set yourself up for success? And that the company starts to invest in you and have a belief that you're there for the long term and that they're going to give you more and more responsibility and you've made a good impression. All right, so that's what we're calling the first 90 days, and that's how we want you to think about it. From the day you sign your offer letter, that's when they're starting to evaluate, hey, did we make the right decision? Did we hire the right person? What are they doing? To this sense of, all right, I'm part of this group. All right, and research shows that what you do early on in a job matters a ton. It's when companies are evaluating you, you're making those first impressions, your manager is deciding whether they've made the right hire, not the right hire. It's really important that you make these great impressions in these first 90 days because it's going to set you up for success for the roles that you're going to go forward on. Whether you build that momentum in those first 90 days and it allows you to keep growing, or if you hit a couple stumbling blocks and you're needing to find yourself digging out of those, right? So those first 90 days can be quite instrumental into how you grow in this new organization. And it's important that in this first time, you think about having a growth mindset. What I've seen people do over and over again is come in, be judgmental, immediately start to criticize and say, why'd you do it that way? I would have never done it that way. The company I worked at, we did it this way. And very quickly, they rub a lot of people the wrong way. No one's their advocate. No one's rooting for them. So you want to come in with this growth mindset. You want to come in with a willingness to learn. You want to be excited. You want to understand why they did the things they've done. There's probably a reason. I've worked at my fair share of companies where I've come in and say, well, that doesn't make sense. But then after time, I've realized that the way things evolved, it makes perfect sense, right? Because the conditions that led to it being the way it was done were not obvious. So it's very easy to be judgmental and critical, especially when you're brought in to do new things and charge up a company. But you want to be mindful of all the people that are there and the work that they did. And the best way that you can do that is to bring this growth mindset. Understand that all of those things are opportunities to learn and for you to be genuinely inquisitive. All right, it's important that you learn. I cannot stress this enough, that you come in with this mindset of genuine inquiry. When you meet with people, try to learn about them. Try to learn about what they do. Try to learn about the decisions they've made. Try to learn about the work they do. You want to learn. Don't come in and quickly start to make judgments and be too fast with your recommendations. Now, you can't let it go on forever, but you want to be mindful about what's been done. You want to respect what's been done. and you want to earn people's trust that you're a teammate that's going to be there to help them get to the next level. So again, these first 90 days in our approach is really about learning and then adding value. All right, so with that, let's jump into the next section. In this section, we're going to talk about the time before you start, right? Which may not be obvious. You just signed your offer. You're feeling, whew, I'm good. I don't have to worry about it until my start date. Sure, you can go that route. We don't recommend it. There are things that you can be doing in that time to set yourself up for success for the first day that you get there. So let's talk about those. Before you start, you want to start to build on your research. You did a ton of research to land the offer and ultimately secure the job. You did your research for interviewing, you did your research for comp, you did your research on the company, and now you want to continue to build on that. Now that you are going to go work at this company, take all that research and now let's take it to the next level. You want to start to really understand the company. Maybe you got by without understanding their history, their mission, who their founders were. Now's the time to do that. Learn about this company, because once you get there and people see that you did that work, they're going to be excited to have you on the team. They're going to see that you're committed and that you're in it to win it, just like them. So start to do that research on the company. What other products? Start to use them. Start to talk to customers if you can. Try to get research on the funding and the financials. Understand their clients, their competitors. Again, the same stuff that we talked about before, but now that you're in your first 90 days and you know you're going to go to this company, make sure you do these things. Maybe you were able to not do them, but now you really want to understand this is the company you're going into and you want to help them be successful. The next level, if we think about these as concentric circles, one level down is now the department. And that might have been a little harder to get from the outside, but now that you're on the inside, at least you've accepted, you can start to get this information. So understand the department you're a part of, the size, the function, who are the key leaders, what are their success metrics, what are things that maybe haven't gone well. Understand your department. That might be a geography, like you're part of a region, or that you're part of a function like marketing or product. So think about your department, and then your team. And your team is your manager, your peers. If you have direct reports, understand their tenure, their scope, what are they responsible for? And now start to build up this research so you've got much more information and you can see where you've got open questions so you can be genuinely inquisitive once you get there. Go back to your job description. Right. Now that you're in, you can ask a little bit tougher questions. You can see which things in the JD really matter, which were kind of like high-level general expectations. And you can ask people very poignant questions around, hey, does this really matter? What matters here? Obviously, without sort of revealing that you may or may not have these abilities. But go back to the JD, and now that you've gone through the process and you've seen all the interviews, you can probably have a better understanding of what really matters to the company and what are long-term ambitions from the role and what are short-term ambitions, because part of what you're going to want to do is get those wins. So understand what really matters to the company, what are their objectives, and again, the JD is going to be one of these great places to find that stuff and ferret out that information. Something you can do that we highly recommend is to contact your new manager in advance. Some companies may be a little funny about this because technically you're like on the clock before you started working and it could potentially raise some risk for compensation and paying you. So some companies may encourage you not to do this, but if you want to be a go-getter, you want to get this done, you want to make a good impression and build that rapport with your manager, we highly recommend that you do this. Here's a template. It's in the template library that you can use, but send that manager an email, potentially connect with them on LinkedIn, but ask if there's things that you can do. Show that you're ambitious. You want to be mindful that you don't sort of rub them the wrong way and you're trying to do too much if they're super busy, but this gives you a chance to show that you want to get it done, that you're proactive. So we highly recommend that you reach out to your hiring manager in advance of starting. And so as you prepare for the new job, you want to make sure before you start, you reach out, maybe talk to some peers, connect with some future coworkers on LinkedIn. Start to do that research the people that are going to be on your team, research where they came from, what's the tenure of the team, research your manager, and then prepare. Start to create that personal user manual, start to think about your 30, 60, 90-day plan, and now throughout the rest of the class, we're going to talk about these things in detail and how you do them. The personal user manual is a great way to document how you like to work. regardless of whether you give this to people or not, we highly recommend that you do it for yourself, to talk about, your work style, talk about the things that you want to do, how you communicate, how you like to meet. We've got a template in the tools that you can use. There's lots of really great ones online. Then you can get a sense of the team and whether you should share it or not. Some people, it's kind of a polarizing thing. Some people think that personal user manuals could be pretentious, and then, who are you to send a manual on how to work with me? And some people are very, very welcoming of it. So I would look to see if it's something that the culture already does. I think you can go ahead and share it with your manager and say, hey, look, here are some notes on how I've, gone about my career. Here's some feedback I've gotten from previous managers. This is how I know I like to communicate. This is the best way to get in touch with me. I check Slack all the time. I'm a little slower on email, but if that's part of the culture here, I can make sure to check it more, and things like that. So it's a great way to proactively build a rapport and help people work better with you. But again, it's ultimately up to you on whether you want to share it or not. Highly recommend that you go through the exercise and have it there for yourself to be able to share it if you need it. Then there's the 30, 60, 90-day plan. We've got a template for you in the tools as well. We recommend that you download it. It's a Google Sheet, so you can start to put in some objectives for yourselves. And what do you want to do in those first 30 days, those first 60 days, those first 90 days? What I'd recommend also is that you understand the pacing of the company. 90 days could be a very long time, especially if it's a startup, right? Companies may not have 90 days. If it's a big, Fortune 100 enterprise, well, they might think about it in a different way. So think about these 30, 60, 90 days relative to the company. If a company is a year old, 90 days is a quarter of their lifespan. All right, so think about that. You're going to want to stretch that time. Like I said in the intro, the first 90 days is this conceptual notion of from the day you start to the day you're mutually accepted. So be mindful of that and try to pay attention to when you think you've got to get those points on the board and how fast that might be. The smaller the company, probably the quicker you need to do it. All right, so with that, that's some of the things that you can do to prepare in advance of starting. Go through the tools and the templates on the platform, start to fill these out, and get yourself ready before that day. Other things you can do are, be mindful of when you show up, your hardware, your computer, how do the ways that you engage, but some of that will just be easier to do once you start. So let's go ahead and jump into that section. All right, so in this section, we're going to talk about the actual first 90 days. You've started, you're there. What are the things you're doing while you're in this new role? So let's go ahead and jump in. Reminder, the mindset is to learn, learn, learn. Before you jump into doing other things, it is very important that the people you work with understand that you are there to genuinely learn. You want to absorb information before you are quick to start to propose ideas and solutions. So understand the company, understand the problems that they're solving, understand how they serve their customers, and understand how they arrived at their current solution. Make it a point to learn. Can't stress this enough. All right, onboarding remotely. We're at a time in the world right now where a lot of people are working from home, a lot of people are working remotely, and it is different. It is different than companies doing a once a week, once a month onboarding where everyone comes and they do an orientation. So doing these things virtually are going to ask a little bit more of you, and you're going to need to be a little bit more prepared. So a lot of companies don't have formal processes for onboarding people remotely. They're figuring it out as they go. Every day they get better and better at it. Be patient if companies don't have these processes because they were thinking this work from home thing wasn't going to last that long, and now they're really needing to embrace it. Be patient. Understand that everyone's working through it, everyone's doing their best, and be proactive. A big part of working remotely is doing that work and understanding who in the company you want to connect with, who is the person that's going to help take your career to the next level, and then you engaging with them. You're new. They don't know to reach out to you. They're busy doing their thing. So take on that work, be proactive, and try to build those connections. Right? Learn the office policies and learn the office politics, right? Understand how they work. What are work hours? Are they explicit? Not explicit? When do people come online? When do people generally start to increase the chatter on whatever, chat software is going on in the company? If it's a physical office, when do people come in? Be mindful of those things. You don't want to buck the trend. If you used to come in at 10 and everyone comes in at 8 and you just come strolling in at 10, that's not a good look. You want to respect the culture. You want to, before you start to sort of flex those muscles of the things that matter to you, try to blend in, try to be part of the culture. Understand how they dress and how they come to work. Some of these things may or may not be made explicit in an employee handbook. But again, don't try to stand out too much, especially in these early days. Try to, again, respect the culture and be part of the company. Be mindful of time off. If you have vacation pre-planned in these first 90 days, make sure you bring that up in the hiring process. If you don't, be mindful. You just started. It's not generally a good look to just start at the company and within a week or two already request time off. If something comes up, obviously do it. If you're sick, take the time off, of course. But those are the things you really want to be mindful of, and what are the processes on how to do it and how you communicate it out to your team. If you're working remotely, be mindful of what that's like. How do you come online? How do you let people know? Does the team have existing cultures and norms that they do to work through that? Think about lunch. When do you go offline? How do you take that time to yourself? Think again, see what other peers do, how the team thinks about it. Don't just disappear if they're expecting you. Remote, not remote, you'd have different approaches to doing that. And then professional development. Think about how you engage professional development at the company. Are they doing talks, events that you can go to? Think about those things that you can go to during work time, especially in the first 90 days, because those are things you can do to connect with people and start to do that internal networking that can be really valuable. Some questions that you can ask while you're onboarding of your manager and of your team. A good one is, so what should I focus on this week? Who are a few people that I could meet? This is a really great one because you can ask your manager to point you in the right direction of contacts that you can make. Another good one is, what do you wish you knew when you started? Right? Maybe they can lead you into some nuggets that maybe you didn't realize were there, or hey, you should go look at this thing, or I would have never realized this, and they can really expedite your onboarding. Pay attention to how people communicate. So ask, what are the best ways to communicate here? Do you guys use Slack? Do you use text message? Do you use email? Like, what's the most standard? Are there different some of these things tend to be passive or implied, and they're not explicitly communicated. So the more of these cultural norms that you can get via communication, the faster you can assimilate into the culture and not really stand out and make any of those mistakes, right? So a few other things, look for key projects that were successful, and then always, how can I help? How can you help others be successful? Their success will be your success. And what you want to do in these first 90 days is build advocacy, build these people that are rooting for you in your corner, that want to see you succeed, right? So try to be as helpful as you can in these first 90 days. And a way to get to know people is to initiate, introduce yourself, get to know people. We've seen some of our members who try to meet everybody in the company. This is like a 50, 60 person company, but you need to take it on yourself. The company is not oftentimes going to try to put that process in. Some companies are really great about pairing you with a buddy, making sure that you connect with people, but don't leave that to chance. Right? Do that work yourself. See who you want to meet. Start with those concentric circles of your team, then maybe someone further in the department, and then other people in the company. Right? Be mindful, observe the culture, get a sense of the communication. I can't say this enough. You want to be a bit of an anthropologist here. You want to sort of observe, see how they work, what do they do, what are the cultural norms, and then once you've learned them, see how you can help make them better. But don't do that until you understand what they do and why they do it. And then get along with people, smile, connect, be happy to be there. Show them that you're excited about where the company is going to go. Be mindful that it's not too much, and connect with the people and see. But show your optimism and your excitement about where the company can go. Try to keep that criticalness of, we could be doing things better. I just got here. This is crazy. I used to do it this way at my company. Try to temper those thoughts and try to temper those emotions. Connect with people, understand, and be kind. All right, then you're going to want to start to map out the relationships. And there are these 4 primary categories of relationships. There's obviously going to be a lot more, but you want to start to map these out and understand them for yourself. So who's your manager? Who manages you? What's their relationship to you? Then who is a peer? Usually this is someone who has the same manager as you. So you guys would really be the first team if we think about Patrick Lencioni's first team and how to have high functioning teams. That's everyone that shares the same manager. and you guys work together to help your manager be successful and help your business unit or your product team be successful, or whatever it is that you're working on. Then the next would be direct reports if you have them. These are people that you are the manager of, that work for you and that you lead and you help their careers grow. So understand who your direct reports are. And then you may have stakeholders that don't have a reporting relationship at all. This might be another department you serve. This might be a product team that you work with. So be mindful of who your stakeholders are and having that understanding of what your obligations are to them. If you're a product manager, are you serving another business unit and there is no reporting relationship whatsoever? If you're in marketing, are you helping a product launch, but you report into marketing and there is no direct reporting relationship? So stakeholders, can be these potential like potholes in the first 90 days if you don't manage those relationships properly. So this is where you want to leverage your peers and your manager to really understand the stakeholder relationships. All right, so think about that and start to build out this little org chart for yourself of what is the surrounding relationships around you and the different people you work with at the company. All right, some questions to build relationships. So, going into work styles and thinking, do people want to build relationship via work or personal? Some people don't want to have personal conversations until they've got a better sense that you're going to be around and they open up to that rapport. So here's 2 categories of questions. Work questions: how long have you worked here? What led you here? What are some things that surprised you while you were working here? And then maybe some more personal questions are, what energizes you outside of work? Are you a sports fan? Where did you grow up? What are some of your favorite memories? Are you reading any books? And again, depending on the person, they may or may not want to share these things. If you kind of invoke work styles here, the 1s and 4s are going to want to have more of those work-based conversations, and the 2s and 3s are going to have a bit more of those personal questions and connect on a personal level. All right, some other tips on how to build relationships in these first 90 days. Remember, these relationships are great career capital. They will be helpful in this company and they will be helpful beyond. Maybe some of these folks leave, maybe you leave, who knows? But building these relationships is key. And so here's some tips on how to do that. Set up one-on-ones with people. Be careful that you don't overwhelm people with one-on-ones. Make them quick, 15, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, just a quick virtual coffee, get to know you. If you're in an office, maybe you can do it, in the cafeteria or in the kitchen or something. A lot of us are still working from home and virtual, so try to set up that Zoom. Attend events if the company is doing culture building events, learning events. Try to go to those. Don't go to too many early on so you can focus on your team and what needs to be done, but try to do that cultural engagement. Participate in company discussions. If there's like a random channel on Slack or some fun topics, try to engage in those and participate. Learn where people hang out. Are they on Slack? What's the virtual water cooler for the company? If you're back in the office, what are the places that people do that? Are there events that people go to? Listen to the company discussion. Go to that general channel and see what people are talking about. Go back and read the past conversations and learn the culture. Learn what shapes it. Learn what matters. And see who are the cultural influencers in the company. Those are also relationships you're going to want to build. Right? Leverage work styles. It's really a great way to build rapport. If you can systematically build empathy and understand others, you can speak to them and treat them the way they want to be treated and spoken to. So we really recommend that you make that effort. And as you build out that diagram of the organization, try to discern work style. Try to see what people's work styles are. Understand your work style and try to build those connections. And you can do that by going over to the work style tool. It's part of the platform. You can style yourself. If you're feeling really bold, you can encourage some new colleagues to do the 360 on you, make them aware of this, start to build that common language. If the company already uses something like DISC or colors or some other behavioral assessment, you can lean right into that because our work style framework is pretty compatible with those. 1, 2, 3, 4 is DISC. Again, a lot of the language and recommendations and advice are very, very similar, if not the same. So leverage your work style as a way to build that rapport, understand yourself, and then also use that as a way to understand where you might struggle and where you might excel. If you've got that primary 2-ness, building the connections is going to be easy. If you've got that primary 4-ness, that might be a little trickier. You might be a little more, a little more cautious about building those connections. If you've got that primary oneness, you might be bold and jump right in. If you've got that primary fourness, you might be waiting to see when it's right. You don't want to rub someone the wrong way. So think about those things. Look at how your style shows up and make sure that you sort of counteract some of those natural tendencies to help you build the rapport as fast as possible. And once you've done that work, build out that org chart and try to understand the style of your manager, the style of your peers, the styles of stakeholders. This starts to be like pretty advanced work style work, but it can be very, very helpful in building rapport. And you can go into the tool and you can see how other styles operate, what comes easy to them, what takes effort for them, and then you can see how you'd adapt your way of working to build those connections. So highly recommend that you do this, and it'll give you a better sense of how to work with others. There's a few things about the first 90 days that allow you to do things that maybe you can't do beyond the first 90 days. They're pretty unique because you're new. So you kind of get permission to do some things. So you get to ask questions. You kind of get to ask like dumb questions in a way. My recommendation there is, though, don't ask questions that you could find in another way. If the company has an intranet or some of these things are online, don't ask those because that's just kind of lazy and people will tell. But you do get to ask lots of questions because people will know that you're new and you have that permission to do that. So be inquisitive, ask lots of questions. Find out ways to introduce yourself into more parts of the organization because now you can reach out to people that are in a different department and say, hey, I'm new, I'm trying to learn. You can do that in your first 90 days. Once you've been there for a year, that gets to be a little trickier. Right? You've got fresh eyes. You get to bring new perspectives, and people like that. But again, always learn first, ask great questions, don't impose your thoughts until you can be empathetic and understand what the company's been up to. And then take initiative to jump onto projects. That's also something you can do in the first 90 days because your workload's probably not that high. Not always the case, but look to see on ways where you can jump in, chip in, and help a project early on and show those abilities that you have. All right, here's a way to ask for help. We've got a template that you can include. You can just copy paste. But you can ask for help in these early days. You can ask for information. You can ask for a way to connect. You can ask to be introduced to somebody. So be mindful of ways to do that. These first 90 days are a really great way to get to know people and ask for connections and introductions into other part of the business. All right, and when you're there, try to get this feedback. You can start to build that culture of being a person that likes feedback. So early on, you want to get that from your manager. The company may or may not have a feedback cycle, but you can set the tone for how you want to grow in these first 90 days. So with your manager, you can ask to get feedback after a week, 2 weeks, a month. How's it going? Then review it, understand the priorities, understand what's going on in the team, and then make your adjustments and contribute. And try to get on that cycle. You know, your manager may do one-on-ones on a weekly basis, bi-weekly, monthly. You know, that's going to change, but don't let your growth be contingent on whether that happens or not. Take a proactive role in setting up this feedback cycle so you can be a meaningful contributor and your career can grow in this company. All right, so those are some things that you can do in the first 90 days. That feedback is very, very important so that you've got a good sense of how you're blending in, what kind of work they expect you to do, and then what your growth potential can be at this new company. So let's talk a little bit about your personal brand. To land this job, you just did a ton of work to update your resume, get LinkedIn in a good place, and the worst thing you could do is just stop tending to that. So there's some things we want to call out that you should do, especially about announcing your new position. So you want to go ahead and update your master resume. Don't wait till the last minute to do this. Go ahead, clean up, any changes you might have made along the way. Keep this document tidy. We recommend that you do it once a month. Go ahead, log those achievements. Update your blurb because you could use that blurb for introductions internally, externally. So go ahead and update your master resume. Update your LinkedIn. This is a great opportunity to let the world know that you've made this change. And so that might have great implications for your job. If you're in sales or marketing and lead generation matters or partnerships, this is a chance for you to have a kind of a moment for discussion. So you post it, And now people can reach out to you. Maybe that can lead to new partnerships. That could help with hiring. If you're in a position that needs to hire new roles, people will know that you're there now and they might reach out. So we highly recommend that you update LinkedIn, let the world know, share it publicly. You can decide when to do it. Some people like to do it before the role starts. Some people like to do it once they're there, just in case anything gets weird. And some people like to do it after the first 90 days, just to make sure so that they can vet it out and maintain optionality. Figure out the right time for you, but we highly recommend that you do it. Update your headline, update your skills, update the company. Make sure it's all there, because then it'll help your colleagues find you, and it's a good moment to talk about your successes. Something that goes overlooked and that we highly recommend that you do is to thank everybody that helped you get there. Once you land the job, you get so focused on the job and being successful that you forget about all the people that helped you along the way. So if someone made an introduction, someone gave you an informational interview, you want to go ahead and send those people an update. Let them know. It's like, hey, I got the job. I just started. Thank you so much for all your help. I'll keep you updated on my growth. People really appreciate that. When you help someone, the most rewarding part is knowing that it was helpful. So it would really be great for people to receive that communication from you. And you also want to tend to your network. You want to maintain that networking. Don't just stop because you landed the job and now you'll need it again 2, 3, 4 years. Who knows? Maintain that network. Keep the momentum. You want to tend to yourself and your personal brand and your network, because you never know when you're going to need it. So make sure that you stay on top of that, and you're not that person that just reach out when you needed help, because it's going to be much easier and much better to leverage those contacts and that network on a regular basis if you tend to it. All right, so part of the reason you made this switch is for career growth. You're in this new role. It's going to enable you to do a lot of things, and we want to make sure that you hold yourself accountable to that growth. So we're going to talk about some ways that you can do that. The best way to do it is to set goals, because what gets measured gets managed. So if you can set these great goals that talk about where you want to go and where you want to take your career and put yourself in control of what you want to do, the chances of achieving them are much higher. So here's some things you might want to do. You want to set up a 30, 60, 90-day plan. You want to understand the goals for your team and your department and where they're looking to go. They're going to be helpful for your performance reviews, because you're going to be able to talk about your successes in this empirical way. You set these goals and you achieve them. They're going to be helpful when you're planning for your performance or raise. And they're going to be helpful for your resume, because you're going to set these future goals, these future achievements, and you're going to document them, and you're going to get them, and you're going to add them back to your resume. And they're going to help you with and support you with your personal well-being, because you're going to know where you want to go. It's not going to feel so open-ended. So goals are really important, and doing that work of setting them can be hugely impactful to the growth of your career. So another thing about goals is that they help you keep yourself accountable. If you set these goals that are meaningful and strategic, you can then hold yourself accountable to the things you want to achieve. The company may or may not have them for you, but what are you setting for yourself? Why are you in this role? What is the growth you want to see? And if you set these goals, your chances of achieving it are much, much higher. So let's talk about how you set goals. The framework we recommend is a SMART goal. And it's an acronym that's used a lot. It's specific. Don't leave it open-ended. It's measurable, because you want to know if you actually achieved it or not. It could be a yes, no, or it could be to a number. It's attainable. We recommend that you stretch yourself. Don't just try to set a goal that you know you can hit, but also don't do something ridiculous that you won't hit, because then you'll get discouraged. Make sure it's relevant, that it's moving you in the right direction. It is core to where you want to go, and that it's timed. Set a date, because if you don't set a date, it could leave it open forever and you don't know if you hit it or not. So this is the way you want to go about setting these goals. And it's going to look a lot like a resume achievement, right? There's going to be a lot of similarities there, so we'll talk about that in a second. You can think about also the range of goals. Do you want to set long-term goals, 1 year, 2 years, 6 months, and then short-term goals, 1 week, 1 month, 1 quarter. What I would try to do is look at how the company does their goaling and how they do their measurement. And you're also going to want to think about the age of the company. Again, startups moving very, very quickly, probably need to achieve things very rapidly. Larger companies might have longer term objectives that allow you to plan a little bit longer. So be aware of the context in which you're setting your goals. And then also for yourself, at what pace do you want to go? If you want to get promoted in a year, set those goals that you're lining up and knocking down. If you're looking to build some experience and be there for a bit, then maybe you can set those a little longer. It's entirely up to you. There is no right or wrong answer. Align it with your ambitions and where you want to grow and where you want to go and the growth you want to see. And that's how you want to set your goals. Right? And one thing you can do is think about future achievements. That's what a goal is. When you achieve that goal, that is a future achievement. And when are you going to need achievements again? On your resume. That is how you prove that you have the abilities that a company want to hire you for. And more often than not, you will job search again. You will look for a job again. Empirically, job tenure is 3 to 4 years. Hopefully this job's awesome. You grow forever. You get to stay there. But even when you go for a promotion within the company, you're going to have to document your achievements and prove, compared to an external candidate, why you're the right person internally. So we want you to think about these future achievements. And what you can do is you can leverage the resume writing tool. Write them in the same way, right? The same way that you wrote a resume achievement, grew revenue by X amount to help the team grow by Y amount. Just flip that and make it a future resume bullet. Write your future resume. If you were job searching in a year, what would you want it to say? If you were job searching in 6 months for some reason, what would you want it to say? If you were job searching in 3 years, what would you want it to say? So think about these future achievements, this future resume, what would be on there? And when you write it that way, well, that now becomes your goals. And you can say, hey, I want to have led a team, to have done this, to have increased revenue by 150%, right? Some of those will be bottoms up because the company will do it and you will be able to say you were a part of them. Some of them you can declare and you can help the company get there. So state these goals. Think about the objectives that you want. Have launched a product, grown a team, reduce the advertising costs to grow revenue and increase acquisition and retention. Think about those things, document them, and write them as future goals. And you can use the resume builder or the achievement builder to document those and use those action verbs and those metrics that we've templatized for you. All right, schedule a time for your career growth. I've seen too many times where people start a job, they want to help, they want to do everything they can, and before you know it, they lost that time and energy to invest in their career. We see it so much through the search process, tending to your personal brand, blogging, writing, putting things out there, building your identity. And then once they start that job, all that goes by the wayside. They stop the networking, they stop the posting because they want to be so successful in the company. We understand that, but try to continue to focus on yourself. Carve out that time. If you were doing things to build your professional identity and professional brand throughout the job search, maybe you can't do all of it because obviously your time commitments are different, but try to do some of it. If you were posting on social media, try to do some of it. If you were blogging, try to do some of it. If you were networking and connecting with people, try to do some of it. If you were hosting informational interviews or conducting informational interviews, try to do a few. Give yourself one a month, but try to keep that growth going and things that you control. Don't just wait for the company to have a career development plan and to help you do it. Do those things where you are in control and you are managing your career growth, and block out that time because that's ultimately what you got to do. You got to make the time for it. We believe strongly that your career growth is in your hands. Again, some employers might be wonderful about doing it, but it's ultimately up to you. All right, so with that, we'll wrap this section up and move on to the wrap up for the class. All right, so that was the first 90 days class. Again, it's the kind of thing that we don't really think about. We tend to exhale, let our shoulders down once we start the company. Maybe a week before we get a little antsy because we haven't heard anything from the company. Are we still going to be there? What should we wear? How do we start? Didn't get my computer yet. But it's really, really important. And honestly, the job search isn't done until you've reached that moment of mutual acceptance. A lot of companies will have a kind of probationary period. And even for yourself, you might have other conversations that were going follow up while you're in your first 90 days. And you may want to still have an interview if that dream job, actually comes back because they weren't hiring and then they open the position again. So until you reach that moment of mutual acceptance, we really think you're kind of still job searching. So we really think the first 90 days are part of that search process. And for you to really be invested and excited about the role, for the company to be invested and excited about you, you really want to put this time and energy. Don't let your guard down once you've signed that offer letter. You really need to show up, and you need to keep putting in that same kind of effort to set you up for growth, and will ultimately be a promotion and growth within the company so you can keep growing your career. All right, so we'll wrap up here. This is the first 90 days. We think it's super important. Do the work. It'll pay off, and you'll see it really help propel your career.